They slammed her head against steel until her vision split, wrapped her wrists in duct tape until her hands turned gray, dragged her through gravel until her knees left a trail, then threw her in a hole and buried her alive. No last words, no grave marker, no chance, just dirt, darkness, and the sound of shovels scraping stone. But what they didn't know, she wasn't just some intelligence officer they'd caught snooping. She was a Navy SEAL. And while they walked away, thinking the Earth would do what they couldn't, what she did next, with one knife, one breath, and one broken beacon, turned the entire compound into a crime scene and made the men who tried to erase her wish they'd finished the job. Before we show you how she clawed her way back from the grave, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because what you're about to see isn't just survival, it's revenge. The night was silent. In that way, only isolation teaches you to fear. No crickets, no wind, just the creak of rusted hinges, somewhere in the dark, and boots crunching gravel like teeth grinding bone. They hadn't said much since dragging Adrienne Cole out of the transport crate. No one called her by name. No one told her where this place was or why it mattered. But she didn't need their intel. She had enough training to recognize a kill site when she saw one. The compound squatted low in a valley near some nameless foothills. Sheet metal roofs sagging under their own weight. Cinder block walls streaked with rust stains. Floodlights wired to generators that hummed too loud in the quiet. Beyond the perimeter fence, there was nothing. No tree line, no hills, no roads you could see, just dirt and night stretching out forever. She knelt now in the center of a clearing. Knees scraped bloody from being hauled by the wrists across gravel. Arms zip-tied behind her back, shoulders screaming. Blood from a split lip ran slow down her chin. Someone had taken her boots. Another little cruelty meant to break her before they did it for real. "Move," one of the men snapped, nudging her ribs with a steel-toed boot. Adriana didn't flinch, just looked straight ahead, kept her breathing measured. They'd worked her over for hours before this. Demanded access codes, supply routes, handler names. She gave them nothing. Not because she was stubborn, but because she knew the second she did, they'd bury her anyway. So they decided to skip the questions. The hole was already dug, 8 feet long and 4 wide, maybe 5 deep. Fresh dirt piled high on one side like a warning no one needed to read twice. 2 of the mercenaries grabbed her under the arms and hauled her forward. One grunted something under his breath in a language she didn't recognize. Balkan, maybe. The other just spat into the dirt. They dropped her beside the pit and kicked her in. She hit hard, shoulder first, then rolled onto her back, wind knocked clean out of her lungs. The ground was still warm from the sun, dry near the surface, damp and cold deeper down. A shovel clanged, then another. They started tossing dirt in. Adrienne didn't scream, didn't beg. She just lay there, letting her breathing settle back into rhythm. The first shovelfuls hit her legs, then her stomach, then her chest. "You're lucky, you know," one of them muttered between scoops. "Not everyone gets a grave." The other one snorted. "She won't need it long." Dirt struck her face. She turned her head to one side. Every breath got thinner, shallower. The weight pressed her ribs into the earth like a vice tightening one turn at a time. She focused on sounds, the shovel's rhythm. The way one man limped slightly on his left leg. The scuff of tires in the distance as a vehicle turned over. Diesel engine. Old. Probably armored. But leaking oil. The dirt crept past her neck. Then her chin. Then her cheeks. Someone stepped closer and tapped the side of her face with the flat of the shovel. Should have talked. She didn't blink, didn't look away. Then came the last scoop. It landed with a muffled thud. Darkness swallowed everything, and the earth began to settle. It wasn't the weight that got most people. It was the silence. When the last layer of dirt pressed down over Adrienne's face, the world didn't go quiet. It turned thick, muffled, distant, like being underwater and stone at the same time. Her lungs registered it first, the panic of not being able to fully inhale, chest rising against resistance, every breath shallow, useless, but she didn't panic. She counted 4 seconds in, 3 out. the soil packed against her ribs and collarbone like someone had thrown a weighted blanket made of concrete over her. Granules shifted into her mouth, her nose coating her tongue in a taste like iron and rot. She twisted her jaw slightly, carving out a pocket of space the width of a matchbox. Not for comfort, for oxygen. SEAL training called it grave-proofing, a rare drill, done only once, only in the elite phases. Most didn't talk about it after. She remembered it clearly. Coronado, week 7. Buried beneath sandbags inside a shipping container with nothing but a plastic straw and a steel pipe. Instructors screaming from above. Space is survival. Panic is death. Adrian hadn't panicked then. She wouldn't now. She flexed her right shoulder, feeling the press of damp dirt against her scapula. The weight wasn't fully compacted. They'd buried her in a hurry. Lazy. Amateur. Probably thought the trauma alone would finish it. She twisted again, this time with her knee. Soil shifted, barely, but it was enough. Above her, the earth creaked as it settled into itself. A beetle crawled across her cheek. She ignored it. One more breath, one more count. A memory flickered through the dark. Fort Bragg, a SEER instructor in a windbreaker. Face like worn leather. The body can survive 10 minutes under sand if you do 3 things. Control your breath, make microspace, move when the dirt moves. So she did. With every exhale, she flexed her jaw, her neck, her clavicle, expanding a millimeter of space at a time, creating uneven collapse above her face. Soil was selfish. It always filled the biggest voids first. Her trick was making sure that void wasn't her mouth. Her vision swam in black and blue pulses. Pressure mounted behind her eyes. She wasn't dying, not yet. But the longer she stayed still, the harder it would get. She focused on her ankles. The zip tie had cut circulation off days ago, but her boot was still there. Or what was left of it, just behind the heel. The blade, taped under the arch. A stubby 3-inch ceramic edge with no shine and no metal signature, invisible to scanners. Standard issue for DevGru field operatives who knew how to hide things where no one looked. She wiggled her foot, once, twice. The strap rubbed against raw skin. She bent her knee the smallest amount she could. Her hamstring seized. Dirt collapsed slightly inward. But the blade shifted. She wasn't out. But she wasn't dead. And she sure as hell wasn't staying buried. Adrian curled her wrists until her knuckles went white. The soil pressed harder with every movement, collapsing inward like something alive trying to smother her. Each breath she dragged back through clenched teeth tasted of iron and decay. Her lungs burned, her ears filled with a low thrum that might have been her own heartbeat, might have been the earth itself. She willed her fingers toward her boot. The knife was there. She knew it was there. She'd hidden it under the arch when they dragged her off the road. A reflex no one had noticed. 3 inches of ceramic edge, ridged handle, no metal signature. It had been a last hope. Now it was her only one. The blade's hilt brushed her fingertips once, twice. Then she lost it as dirt shifted again. She stopped moving, let the weight settle, waited for the tiny space she'd carved to refill with air, then tried again. Her middle finger caught the lanyard this time. She hooked it, twisted her wrist, drew it up slowly, slow enough not to tear away the fragile tunnel she'd made with her breath. The knife's spine dug into her palm as she flipped it backward, teeth closing on the dull edge to reposition it. Ridiculous angle. But SEAL training had a saying for this. If you can move a finger, you can move a blade. She began sawing at the roots, pinning her arm to her ribs. The motion was microscopic, more tremor than cut. Every few seconds, soil trickled into her eyes, her mouth. She swallowed mud, choked, stopped, breathed shallowly again, shoulder muscles trembling under the load, then kept cutting. In her mind, she replayed the grave shift drill from Coronado. Instructors yelling over a pit of sandbags, stopwatches running. Don't fight the weight, ride it, let it shift, make it your ally. She'd hated that day, but the memory now was a rope in the dark. The root gave. Her arm slid up an inch. Dirt collapsed across her face, but she twisted with it, not against it. Another inch. Her chest expanded, fractionally. She clawed at the soil with her free hand. knifing small channels along her ribs to keep it from sealing shut again. Her heart pounded like it wanted to climb out before she did. Her left wrist went numb. She ignored it, kept cutting, kept shifting. Then suddenly her fingers broke into cold air. The top layer crumbled away. She pushed, elbows scraping, knife still in her grip. Dirt cascaded down around her shoulders as she wriggled upward like something clawing out of its grave. Her face burst through the surface. Air hit her like fire. She coughed it in, chest heaving, spitting mud. The night sky swam above her, scatter of pale stars blurred by tears she didn't mean to cry. She lay there, half buried, breathing like an animal, not dead, not even close. Adriana didn't move at first, just lay still in the dirt, taste of mud thick on her tongue, ears straining for any sound beyond her own ragged breath. Nothing. The men who buried her had vanished. Maybe they thought the earth would finish what they started. Amateurs. Her eyes adjusted slowly. Sparse clouds drifted across a thin moon. The compound's perimeter lights hummed faintly in the distance, casting jagged silhouettes across rusted barrels and the edge of a barn. A pickup truck idled beside the barn's rear door, diesel chugging, exhaust feathering into the cold air. A shape stood nearby, half obscured by the truck bed. One of them, alone, rifle slung lazily over his shoulder, smoking. He hadn't noticed the ground had moved. Adrian didn't rise. She slithered, slow, precise, using elbows and knees, body still caked in earth. The pit behind her yawned open like a scar, loose dirt concealing what they'd assumed would be a corpse. She kept low as she crept forward, knife still in her hand. No time to wipe the mud from her eyes. Every second counted. Every breath had to stay controlled. The guard exhaled a plume of smoke, looked out over the fence line, bored, relaxed. 15 feet, then 10, then 5. He turned slightly, muttering something under his breath. She caught the word American. That was all she needed. She moved. 2 fast steps from the crawl. A leap. She drove the knife up into his thigh, high, fast, deep. He made a gurgled grunt, more confusion than pain, as she grabbed the front of his shirt and shoved him hard against the side of the truck. Her forearm braced against his neck. Knife twisted once in the artery. He was dead before he hit the ground. She caught the rifle before it clattered, eased it down beside her, quickly checked the chamber, loaded, safety off, standard Kalashnikov knockoff. Good enough! She frisked his pockets with practiced hands. 2 spare mags. A cracked burner phone, a radio. She clicked the radio to low. Static, then a voice in broken English. Unit 2 copy? She's not in the manifest. Confirm pickup window. Under 30. She turned it off. Adrian took the corpse by the wrists and dragged it slowly back toward the pit. Her arm screamed with the effort, but she didn't stop. She wasn't covering her tracks. She was hiding the evidence. Once the body was slumped halfway inside the grave they'd meant for her, she tossed a few shovelfuls of dirt over him. Not enough to bury, just enough to buy time. She picked up the rifle, slung it over her shoulder, adjusted the stolen vest around her ribs. Her breathing slowed. Her mind didn't. One body down, one rifle secured, one mission unfinished. Adrian Cole stood now, a ghost covered in soil, walking toward the compound that had tried to erase her. The barn loomed like a carcass in the dark. Metal siding streaked with rust. Roof sloped just enough to shed rain, but not silence. One floodlight near the entrance cast a sickly orange glow across the gravel lot, leaving the far side in shadow. Adriana took the long way around, hugging the fence line, boots silent over packed dirt. Her legs ached. Her ribs felt like they'd been hollowed with a crowbar, but her grip on the rifle stayed firm. This wasn't about escape anymore. She reached the side of the barn and pressed her back to the corrugated steel. Heat radiated through the metal, generators nearby. Inside, she heard muffled voices, 2 men, maybe 3, speaking English with clipped accents. One was pacing, the other stayed still. Said the crates go out tonight. A pause. And if they don't? They'll ask what happened to the American. A laugh. Then the sound of something metallic dragging. Adrienne slid toward the loading ramp, crouched low, peeked through a break in the siding. Crates, dozens of them. Some wooden, some plastic wrapped, stenciled labels half scratched off, But she didn't need clarity to recognize military lot codes. Her pulse picked up. She'd seen these serials before, when she flagged the intercept weeks ago. Weapons grade, NATO registered, now rerouted and hidden under false manifests labeled farm supply. And in the far corner of the barn, resting on top of one of the crates, was her beacon. They'd taken it off her vest, tossed it aside like trash. She checked her rifle. One mag chambered, two more full. Silencer mounted. She clicked the safety off. The light overhead flickered as the generator choked. The man inside swore. Kick something. Adrienne moved. One step. Two. She slipped into the barn's blind spot just inside the loading dock and froze in the shadow of a towering pallet stack. Voices again, closer. Tell him we're still running the route. She's dead. You didn't check. She was under 5 feet of dirt. What do you want, a pulse? Adrienne edged toward them. One leaned against a crate, smoking. The other sorted through a binder. She took the shot clean. Suppressor coughed once. First man dropped like a sack of sand. The second spun. Too late. Her boot cracked into his knee. Rifle muzzle rising to his throat. He choked on the floor. No time for questions. She ended it fast. Silence fell again. She retrieved her beacon, flicked the switch. Dead. Water damaged. But the core housing was intact, maybe fixable, if she could get to the board. She tucked it inside her vest and turned to the crates. Markings matched the manifest she'd memorized weeks ago. This wasn't random smuggling. This was coordinated rerouting. And someone high up had wanted her silence before she traced it. But they'd buried the wrong woman. She moved deeper into the barn, disappearing among the weapons they'd tried to hide. Now she had proof. Now she just needed the world to hear it. The barn stank of oil, metal, and rot. Adrienne ducked between crates, rifle up, breathing through clenched teeth. Her beacon sat useless in her vest, circuit board fried, no ping transmitting. She needed comms. She reached the far end of the barn. A row of dirty windows looked out across the compound. From here, she saw it. A matte black van parked just outside the main generator shack. Antenna bristling from the roof. Rear doors propped open with cables snaking into the dirt. A signal scrambler. Of course, that's how they'd blocked her ping. No wonder the radio earlier had been static throttled. The van was choking everything but internal traffic. If she wanted to send a signal out, she'd have to kill the jammer first. She checked the bodies one last time. Clean. No movement. Then slipped out through the barn's side door. The night was still heavy, warm despite the cool breeze rising from the east. Clouds shifted overhead, moonlight flickering across the compound's perimeter fence. Adrienne moved low, cutting through the shadow line beside a drainage ditch that fed toward the old septic system. The concrete tunnel was narrow and cold, walls slick with moss and runoff. She slid into it anyway, rifle slung across her back, both hands bracing the tunnel's slimy edge. Pain lit up her shoulder where the zip tie had cut deep earlier. She ignored it. Sloshed through ankle-high water. The walls closed tighter as she neared the other side, just wide enough to crawl. She scraped her knee against rebar. Bit back a hiss. At the far end, she waited, counted 10 seconds, then peeked out. 2 guards flanked the van. One leaned against the front fender, rifle across his lap. The other smoked, staring at the dead zone between the generator and the gravel yard. Neither looked alert. They weren't expecting trouble. She slid back into the ditch, eyes scanning. There, a broken shard of concrete lodged near her boot. Heavy, rounded. She pulled it free, palmed it, waited for the wind. A gust rattled through the generator shed's loose siding. As it hit, she stood quickly and hurled the shard toward the opposite fence. It clanged against chain link with a sharp metallic ring. Both guards turned. Adrienne moved. She rushed them low, body a shadow. The first never saw her. She slammed the rifle butt into his jaw, then swept his legs. He hit the gravel hard. The second turned just as she fired. 2 suppressed rounds into the torso, clean and quick. The first tried to rise. She drove a knee into his ribs and choked him out with her arm. Whispered, "Don't take it personally." He slumped. She dragged the bodies behind the van, then climbed into the back. The inside was a mess of blinking gear, tangled cables, signal processors running hot. She found the power core, took 2 rounds and blew it into a cloud of sparks. The jamming died instantly. Above her, radios crackled alive, and somewhere far above the clouds, a Navy bird blinked to life on the radar. Adrienne ducked out of the van, blinking against the sudden brightness of the floodlights lining the far end of the compound. Everything looked sharper now, edges harder, shadows deeper. Without the signal scrambler choking the air, the silence wasn't so thick. She jogged toward the edge of the gravel lot, staying in the blind spots between towers. Her legs were trembling, not from fear, fatigue. Her body was still recovering from the burial. Every tendon ached. Every breath scraped her throat raw, but she was moving, and now they'd hear her. She reached the far side of the barn, dropped behind a stack of discarded oil drums, yanked the broken beacon from her vest. The casing was cracked, but the core board still blinked when she twisted the reset screw. 1 blink, then 2, then the red light turned steady. Adrienne exhaled and clipped it to the underside of a crate labeled Feedstock, Talon. Inside, marked rifle barrels sealed in foam. She planted it like a flag, magnetic mount clinking softly against the steel. A voice crackled through the radio she'd stolen earlier, this time clear. Unidentified ping detected, southeast quadrant. Single beacon signature, not on the manifest. Then another voice, calmer, clipped and American. Acknowledged, confirmed signal triangulation, prep fast recon response, air asset already en route. Adrienne's lips curled into the first expression she'd made in hours. Not a smile, just confirmation. They were coming. She backed away from the crate stack, slipped behind the barn wall again, retrieved one last item from her vest pocket. A trigger strip, thin, civilian grade, but wired to a block of plastic explosive she'd swiped from the generator housing before blowing the scrambler. She taped the trigger to the base of the barn door, slid the charge under the concrete lip where it wouldn't be seen, then she ran. The detonation rolled through the compound like a god coughing. The barn door blew inward. A fireball punched through the roof, sending a shockwave of flame. Splinters and steel upward in a bloom of orange light. Men screamed, sirens wailed, searchlights snapped on, dogs howled from a far pen. Chaos, but not panic, not for Adrienne. She crouched in the shadow of the equipment shed, rifle steady, eyes scanning. Guards rushed toward the blast site. 3, maybe 4, leaving the far side of the compound exposed. Exactly what she needed. She tapped the radio once more. Beacon planted, cache marked. Scrambler destroyed. Area compromised. Asset requesting extraction. Static. Then, asset confirmed. Stand by. She leaned her head against the cool steel of the shed, closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them again. She wasn't done, just awake. And now the rest of the compound would learn what they buried wasn't a body. It was a storm. She heard the footsteps before she saw him. Slow, heavy, confident. Adrienne crept around the far side of the generator shed, boots muffled against dirt. Smoke from the exploded barn curled into the sky behind her, casting flickering shadows across the main compound. Sirens continued wailing from the blast-triggered alert system, but the guards were disorganized, running toward the fire. All except one. He wasn't running. He was coming straight for her, tall, broad, a familiar silhouette, the lead contractor. She froze in the dark behind a low shipping crate and watched him through the heat shimmer. Black jacket, tactical gloves, short-barreled shotgun gripped in one hand. He moved like a man who thought he'd won a long time ago and was just tying up loose ends. He stepped into the floodlight, face now visible, sharp jaw, broken nose, scar curling from his ear to his chin. She remembered him. He was the one who'd leaned over the pit, spat near her face, said no grave markers for ghosts. Adrienne rose slowly from behind the crate, rifle raised. "You missed the grave marker." He stopped, smiled. "Well," he said, leveling the shotgun, "looks like I was wrong." They moved at the same time. He fired first, blast wide, catching only crate wood as Adrienne dove sideways. Her shoulder hit the dirt hard, but she rolled, came up behind a broken water tank, fired 2 suppressed rounds in return. One sparked off the shotgun. The other grazed his leg. He cursed, staggered, didn't fall. "Should have stayed buried," he shouted. You should have learned how to finish a job, she snapped back. He charged. The shotgun came up again, too close now. She ducked under the barrel, drove the butt of her rifle into his ribs, then dropped low and swept his legs. He crashed onto his back, the shotgun spinning out across the gravel. Adrian scrambled after it, fingers brushing the metal just as he grabbed her ankle and yanked. She hit the ground face first, vision bursting white. He lunged to his knees, wrapped a hand around her throat, squeezing, but she didn't panic. Her hand found the ceramic blade strapped under her vest again. Second reserve, never removed. She stabbed upward, once, twice, into the soft meat of his side. He grunted, released her throat, staggered back. Blood poured from beneath his jacket. She stood, steady now. He dropped to one knee, breathing ragged. Adrian stepped forward, took a pair of flex cuffs from her cargo pocket, zip-tied his wrist behind his back with practiced efficiency. You're going to sit right here, she said, tightening the strap until he winced, and watch your little empire fall apart. He didn't reply. She walked him to a weapons crate, shoved him down, tied his ankles to the pallet frame, then pulled a permanent marker from her pocket and scrawled one word across his chest rig, cargo. She keyed her radio. Target secured, tagged for pickup. The only thing he could do was bleed and listen. The first thing she heard was the low thump of rotors, deep, heavy, familiar. Adrienne looked up from the tied contractor, still slumped against the weapons crate and breathing like a dying engine. The sky was starting to lighten just slightly at the edges. Still night, but the kind that whispered dawn was coming. A black dot emerged on the horizon. Then another. MH-60 Blackhawks. She stepped into the clearing, rifle lowered, beacon blinking steadily from her vest like a heartbeat. The noise swelled above her, rotors pounding the air in a perfect rhythm, wind flattening the high grass and stirring ash from the burned-out barn behind her. The first bird hovered above the compound perimeter, side door open, ropes trailing. Seals dropped fast, clean, tight, silhouettes cut from the sky like they belonged to it. 3 on the southern side, 2 more near the generator shed. The lead operator touched ground and swept the area, rifle raised. Then his eyes locked on her. Call sign? He barked through the static. Echo 6, she said, voice hoarse. Asset confirmed. Compound clear. Primary cargo tagged for retrieval. He approached slowly, eyes scanning her face. You're Adrienne Cole? She nodded once. You're late. He gave a low, grim smile. Well, you're not dead. Almost, she replied. They buried me. Another operator moved past her toward the crates, checking labels, snapping photos of the lot codes with a tactical tablet. Got confirmation, he called. Stolen NATO ordnance, matching flagged serials. This is the motherlode. The squad leader nodded and keyed his mic. Seal 1 to command. We're good. Package found. Asset alive. Enemy contained. 2 medics descended next, dropping out of the second Blackhawk. One moved toward Adrian immediately, reaching for her vest. You're bleeding. Badly. She slapped his hand away. I've got a message first. She turned to the squad leader, eyes hard. 8 crates, labeled incorrectly, hidden under false manifests. This wasn't small time. They knew what they were sitting on. The medic tried again. Ma'am, she looked at him. 5 more minutes, he sighed, backed off. Adriana walked back toward the contractor, still alive, still coughing blood. She pointed at him. He buried me alive. I want him on that chopper. Hands zip-tied, face down. The squad leader gave a low whistle. 2 SEALs lifted him, without a word. Adrian finally let her rifle drop. Her body slumped slightly under its own weight. The medic returned, catching her elbow before she collapsed. Let's get you up. They walked her toward the helicopter. Dust kicked up around her boots, ash swirling past her eyes. She squinted through it as they reached the bird. The side door slid open, warm air and iodine inside. She paused, one hand on the rail, looked back over her shoulder at the compound. Still smoldering, still falling apart. She climbed aboard, and this time no one tried to stop her. The helicopter lifted off in a storm of dust and downdraft. Adrienne sat strapped to the inner bench, wrapped in a thermal blanket, IV line taped to her arm, dirt still crusted around her fingernails. The medic worked silently beside her, checking vitals she didn't ask for. Across from her, the squad leader scrolled through the manifest scans. occasionally glancing up at the woman they'd been sent to recover. She didn't say much, just kept her gaze fixed on the shrinking compound below, blackened barn roof, cratered ground, and the stacks of stolen weapons now under Navy lock. And in the center of it all, lit faintly by the last burn of the beacon clipped to her vest, sat the contractor, still zip-tied, still marked, cargo. Adrian let her head fall back against the bulkhead, eyes closed, breathing finally steady. They'd buried her, and she dug her way out. Now, let me ask you something. Could you survive being buried alive with nothing but a knife in your training? Would you wait for rescue, or would you claw your way out like Adrian did? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit harder than you expected, go ahead and tap the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss the next mission. Share this video with someone who still thinks escape is impossible, or that Navy SEALs only fight from the front. Our next story is already waiting on your screen, so go watch that now. Same time tomorrow. I'll see you there.